Hello, my beautiful friend. This is A Time to Care the Caregivers podcast. Today with me, I have Jessica Rich. She's a self-wellness coach with more than 10 years of experience working with Fortune 500 leaders. She understands women leadership and she helps women focus on self-love, personal growth, get free of limiting beliefs, navigate workplace politics. Yuck, everybody. I guess everybody works has something to do with that. And she aligns passions with skills. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you here because I think you're the perfect combination of travel, work, and leisure. So I'm delighted to have you here with me today.
Yeah. I definitely think my experience has allowed me to find a good balance. I call it harmony between work and personal life. And I'm excited to share with your audience.
So how did you find, because I know this all started with your personal experience. So tell us how you figure things out for yourself.
Well, I'll say this. I was doing all the things that society tells us that we're supposed to do, right? I got my bachelor's, started working in corporate America, was, kind of going up the chain of like leadership roles, really just educating myself to be competitive. And then in 2022, I got promoted to senior leadership. So in most people's mind, I made it, right? I got the American dream going on. And, I'm a homeowner, I'm successful, I have an MBA, I'm leading leaders. Like, what else could you want? And I'm making really good money. But I had already experienced some form of burnout a couple years before that. And so I knew that I was doing all the things that I was supposed to do in corporate, but I wasn't taking care of Jessica. And so 2022, I get promoted, right? Everyone feels like we've made it. They're excited for me, always had a supportive community. But I knew right away that that job was not a good fit for the person I had became because I had been intentional about self-care, self-love, going to therapy, really focusing on becoming a better version of myself. And so as I navigate this new season of being a senior leader, it just didn't match the piece that I had in my personal life. And I told my manager at the time within probably about 2 months, I was like, I don't know how this fits into my life because I live a very peaceful life. And so I continue in the role. I've always been very passionate about helping others and coaching and developing them. And then I go to Bali in June 20, and I go there for a retreat, but I decide to go 5 days by myself. So I get there beforehand, find a tour guide on TikTok, and I have a life changing experience. And what I mean by life changing is I felt like I was so at peace, relaxed. And if anybody's ever been to Bali, it is very simple. The hustle and bustle we have here, it's nothing like that in Bali. It's slow, the food is fresh, the people are friendly, but it's so simple. And after that experience, I basically came back with this new thought process of like, I get to define what success and happiness looks like, not anyone
Mhm.
else. Like I just felt a different level of joy and peace there. I didn't post a lot on social media, but I posted some. And so my friend was like, "You look so relaxed." She was like, "I don't know what it is, but just the photos feel different." And I felt different. And so I came back with this new thought process of like, Jessica, you get to define what success and happiness looks like for your life, no one else. And that was different for me because I'm one of eight, so I have seven siblings. I was the first to go off to college. I'm the first of so many things that I had this pressure and this responsibility that I put on myself. And some from that moment forward, I just started looking at life differently, which eventually led me to fully coaching, walking away from corporate America last year, and redefining what success and happiness looks like and helping some of my clients and community do the same.
Love that because and I think we pressure ourselves so much all the time. I'm big on women's rights. My mom was an advocate for women's rights. And my grandmother, she defied all the laws for women at the time. She went to college, she got a divorce, she completely broke stereotypes. And I consider I have to be better because they paved that way. And I guess you feel the same. And I believe a lot of people feel that way. This is what was delivered to us. Now we have to exceed it and make it better. And
Yeah,
it's so hard.
right. You're right. It is. It creates pressure, right? You want to carry the torch forward and you're like, all the things that they went through, like, I want to stand in that and I want to lead the next generation. But you also have to find that healthy balance of prioritizing yourself while also honoring them and all the things that they went through to give you the rights.
And I have a different perspective. What if we were to take a different journey, not even the same one? Um, like right now, we're going through, as we're recording this, the Winter Olympics, and we see all these high level athletes. And I often think, what is like, what is going to happen with their kids? Because if you're the GOAT, succeeding and being better than the GOAT is going to be really hard. So, is Michael Phelps training his kids to be swimmers and Olympic swimmers? I would really think about it. I wouldn't want if I and I don't know what Michael Phelps thinks, and he can think whatever he wants to, but when you put that pressure on your kid is really tough.
No, you're right. And some of the pressure comes directly right from our parents or the generation before us. And then some of it is pressure that we put on ourselves, right? Because is he pressuring his children to become the next GOAT when it comes to swimming, or do they feel like they have to? And so now they're adding that pressure to themselves. Because I think some parents, they're like, I know what I went through, and so I don't want my kids to go through that. And then you have some children like, no, like I have to carry this forward. You paved the way. And so I think it's really about understanding, going back to like, what does success and happiness mean to you? And allowing children and young adults and adults to like define that for themselves. I'm very happy that my mom is fully supportive of some of the life-changing, decisions that I've made where other people are like, why would you leave that high-paying job? Why would you walk away from that salary? People cannot imagine me making some of the decisions that I've made, but my mom has respected my journey. And so I do think in that situation naturally. You think about all these football players, right? And basketball players too.
Mhm.
A lot of their kids go on to be athletes. And
Yes.
so not putting that pressure on them, allowing them to define who they are, who they want to be, discover their path because they have to live with that misery or that shoulda, coulda, woulda if they would have done something differently.
So, how do you start paving your own way? Because you did it. So, how do you start defining goals, your new way of succeeding in life?
So initially it occurred with me just kind of hitting a wall in 2020 and calling out exactly what was going on. I was carrying the weight of everyone else. I'm a very good listener, right? And so when you have a good listening ear, people do what? They call you and
Yes.
they vent. And, when you are such a caring person, you don't have any boundaries. And so I was the person that would listen. And so, in addition to whatever I was carrying, now I was carrying everyone else's situation as well, because you can't just walk away and just leave it there. You're carrying some of that with you. And so, it came down to me identifying that I needed boundaries because I was wearing myself out personally and professionally. And so understanding that some of the roles and responsibilities that I had taken on, nobody had given it to me. I took it on myself because to your point, you want to be great. You want to be able to say that I do this and I'm the next version or better version of my parent, my mom and my grandmother. And I'm carrying forward these traits and these characteristics that they have, but then you wear yourself down because all of that is not you. And so I started putting boundaries in place. I started really practicing self care. So my time was very important. And the one thing that I did that I think was probably the best thing I could have ever done is I know that I love helping people. I know that I have a great ear. I know that I am great at coaching and developing others. My boundary is I'm going to become a coach, and that way I could turn it on and off. And so I can still pour into people, I can still help people, but at a certain time versus being always readily available. And then when it came to my family and friends, I was able to implement those boundaries of saying, I don't have capacity. I don't have capacity to have this conversation. I don't have capacity to take on whatever you're going through. Can we schedule another time to talk? And so in 2020, I slowly started doing that. And then as time evolved and I'm learning more about myself because I'm continuing to prioritize myself, I'm going to therapy. I'm learning what makes Jessica happy. I'm trying new hobbies. And then I start adding things on. And so then becomes the in person events, right? I hosted a conference in 2023. Then I added on the retreats because now, I want to make sure that women know that you not only can pour into yourself here, but you know what? Let's take it outside of the group chat and let's internationally travel. Let's take that opportunity to explore other cultures. And so I started stop limiting myself based on the people around and what I think I had to do. And I just started thinking that like the sky is the limit and I can do whatever I want. But the most important thing for me was doing what makes me happy. So the traveling piece is not just for my clients as well. That's something that I enjoyed, but I could also pour into them during that process. And so for me, it was really putting the mirror in front of me and calling out exactly what the issues were and then being able to address them.
You're talking about boundaries. How did people respond to your boundaries?
I think the beautiful thing that I've learned over the last few years is I see my mom and my sister implementing boundaries in their life, or they naturally respect it because I was consistent. So at the beginning, people didn't understand, like, I just don't have the energy to talk, right? When you think about if you work at 9 to 5, most likely you are talking to someone all day and so do you really have the energy after work to talk to someone? And then if you're married with kids, you still have to go home and you have those roles and responsibilities. And so it was me saying like I don't have capacity or can we talk about this later? Can we schedule time to talk? And I think for my mom it was probably a little bit uncomfortable because here I am the daughter saying, I don't really want to talk about that. And she's like, "What do you mean you don't wanna talk about that?" But she respected it because it was the way I approached it, and they could see on the outside looking in, it wasn't just me, like, nitpicking with them. And so it was expressing, like, "I don't like the way this conversation makes me feel. I don't wanna continue on and having these type of conversations with people." And everybody wasn't receptive to it, they didn't understand it, but it was, "The conversation ends here." I am lucky and I'm blessed that it happened that way because I have clients who their parents don't talk to them for months when they start implementing boundaries. So I'm not going to pretend that everybody's story is going to be this way because I meet a lot of people who they don't talk to their mom for 2 to 3 months at a time because they're not happy with them saying, I don't want to have this conversation. I just think because they could see me actively doing the work within myself, they respected it. And so that helped with those conversations.
I agree with you. I consider myself very lucky as well because my family is also very, like, there are times that I just tell my husband, I don't feel like talking at all. I'm not gonna open my mouth. And that's okay. He goes and he plays video games. He makes signals to let me know if I want food or not. But I am lucky in that regard. And I also see people struggling with that. And that's the reason I ask you, because I know that building boundaries can be very scary for that reason. And you feel terrible afterwards. So, what do you recommend people like? Okay, I build this boundary. Now they're not speaking to me. It's been a couple of months and I feel really bad.
Well, I would say first, identify where you need boundaries. And so you can come up with a list of like 10 to 20 plus things that you need boundaries. And so you want to think about like your top 3 to 5 areas where you need boundaries. What doesn't make you feel good? Right? After that conversation or interaction with someone, like you don't like the way that you feel. More than likely, you need a boundary there and you need to identify what the boundary is. And so I always tell clients start off with 3 to 5. I would say towards the 3, and then determine exactly what the boundary needs to be. I've had clients that needed to place boundaries with family when it comes to finances. People always reached out for money. So, okay, well, do you want to help them financially? Yes, I do. Okay. What does that look like? I only have X amount of dollars that I can contribute a month. Now you need to figure out how do you communicate that? How do you implement that, right? Are you taking them grocery shopping with you? Is that twice a month? So you're splitting it up that you're giving it to them. And then you have to determine how do you communicate it. But then you also probably need to role play. And I know some people it's like, "That sounds silly." No, because we're uncomfortable having the conversation. So
Hmm.
you really need to role play because more than likely you have an idea of what the person's going to say. And so you need to be prepared to have your response to stand firm. And then if you've implemented it and you're not having a conversation with that individual, you have to determine if the relationship is worth continuing. Now, with the parent, that's different, right? There are people who, have their situations with their parents and they do cut them off. But if you love your parent and you want to maintain that relationship, then if you want to, you can be the one to give them a call and say, "Hey, we haven't spoken. I know the last time we talked, we were in a disagreement based on this boundary that I have placed in my life. And I just want to talk about why this boundary is important to me." Explain how you feel when
Yes.
they cross that line and know that they're not going to agree. Know that they may not understand, but you have a right to a voice your opinion, your thoughts, express how it makes you feel, what you don't like about it. And this is the resolution that you've come up with to allow you all to maintain a relationship. But they have to understand their part in it. And so that would be my recommendation. I know in the situations that I've dealt with clients where their parents don't talk to them, the parents usually reach out in some form, right? Now, the parent does reach out in a way where they don't acknowledge that they were wrong because in their mind, they're not wrong. They're just responding based on the lack of boundaries that they had with their parents and their grandparents and their siblings. And so sometimes you have to be open and honest to see it from their perspective, but then also stay firm in your boundaries. And so I think the most important piece is talk about how it made you feel and start
Yes.
there.
You're touching so many things that I work with my clients as well, like putting yourself in the other person's perspective. Because if you're not able to bridge both sides, you're gonna be in a disagreement all of the time. And probably you're not gonna make people really understand where you're coming from because you have your own sets of feelings, thoughts, perspectives. That being said, you can sort of bridge and, hey, this is where I'm coming from. Where are you coming from? And that's when people like start connecting again. But you're touching so many important things, role playing, having very clear what you want to say, and then having the courage because there are times and like even though I don't know if it happens to you, but there are times that with a difficult conversation, it's like, "Oh, I don't want to have this conversation and I have to say ABC." And finding the courage is like, "Okay, just jump out of the cliff."
Well, I think most people, right? Most people avoid confrontation, whether it's in the workplace or in your personal life. And so setting a boundary can be confrontational for some people. Absolutely.
Yes, and people don't like them.
Yeah. Don't like the way it feels. I get it.
So how do you combine travel with all of this? Because I love about how you mix travel with finding balance and figuring out all of the things.
So for me, travel travel was added into this to really help me like Okay, so my community initially started with creating spaces for individuals where they can feel like they can prioritize themselves guilt-free. I want to start there. And so by doing that, I identified that there was this need and this desire to travel and to create connections in person because my community initially started virtually. Then we had the in-person event, and then my first travel experience was in Thailand. And so the next level experience for me was, well, most people I talk to say they don't take PTO, they work during PTO, or they are heavily concerned about what people think about them when they go on PTO. My manager is going to think down on me because I took a week off. My manager is going to think they shouldn't have hired me because it's really busy right now and I decided to take PTO. One thing that I learned and is a good way to set boundaries in the workplace is to take your time off. You have to take your time off and you have to actually take it off and be disconnected. I remember I took so at one point I would take 2 to 3 weeks off once a year. And I remember my manager at the time said, well, what about your peers? And I was like, what what about them? I put in my request for time off probably 8 months in advance. It was approved. It wasn't approved right away, but I put in my time 8 months in advance. I had shown that when I was out of the office for a few weeks at a time, I had a plan in place. I'm really strong and believe in delegating. So, a lot of people want to keep their finger on the pulse. Absolutely not. Let me train the next person up, especially someone who reports to me. So this is a development opportunity for them. So when I'm out of the office, there is a plan in place. And so another part of the travel experiences was to empower people to step away from work. Now, if you are out of the country, more than likely your system is not going to be able to be logged into, depending on where you work. So that's another level to allow. But for me, it was also creating fun, adventure, connection, sisterhood, and then also exploring other cultures. A lot of retreats that just retreat leaders I've spoken to, they stay on the property. So they may rent out a hotel boutique, they may rent out an Airbnb, and they never leave the property. With my experiences, it's to have fun and take adventures. So we're hiking. We're doing cooking classes. We are exploring different cultures. In Greece, we did wine tasting, but we also have the physical side. So we did the 7 mile hike. And the beautiful thing is everyone doesn't have to participate because this is your experience. And so I want you to feel empowered that we may have 7 days worth of events, but if you wake up on Wednesday and you're like, I just want to sleep in the bed and order room service, I empower you to do that. But it's giving them the courage to step away where they can't be tied. They most likely can't be connected to work. And they get to discover what they like and enjoy outside of the normal routine in their life. And so that's why my experiences are so important and that I curate them at a way where you can discover something about yourself that you may not be able to discover here in the States.
Love that. And I believe opening to different cultures can really have an impact in your life. I was talking with a friend earlier today, and she was talking about work and experiences at work. She was telling me that today her office is going to be providing lunch and they're providing Indian food. And she's like, now I'm mad. I don't eat Indian food. And I was like, okay, where are you coming from? And I was like, it's not my favorite kind of food, but I can eat it. And she's like, I've been afraid of trying Indian food because I don't handle spices very well. And I was like, yeah, and that between that and being foods high in fiber, I think that could be a combination for disaster. Don't try it at work. And opening to different experiences and leaving those experiences really, I think it is a very good way of understanding other people. And I believe food in particular really opens because we all eat. So it is a really good experience. And you mentioned cooking classes. So even that, what are the traditional cooking methods that certain cultures use that we don't even know about?
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head, like understanding why. the different levels of spices, right? The herbs that they use. I'm super excited for Bali. So when I went to Bali, we didn't participate in a cooking class. But for me, I want them to see the fresh ingredients that they use and why. One thing I loved about Bali was there was fresh squeezed juice everywhere, right? What's the importance behind that? Who doesn't want fresh squeezed juice where you go out? And so Thailand, we got to see the behind the scenes, why they cook certain dishes, desserts, what's important. And it does help you understand and appreciate the culture more. Indian food, I love Indian food. I do know that I only have maybe 2 or 3 people that I can actually eat Indian food with that are willing to try it, that enjoy it. But a lot of people who say they don't like it, I'm like, well, have you ever had it? No. And it's like, okay, well, how do you know that you don't like it? And so a part of the cooking class is to help you see that what you think you don't like, you may actually enjoy. And maybe it's a certain dish that you don't like. Okay, but what's the substitute? And you're going to be able to learn that in the actual cooking class. So, yeah, I think it really helps you understand and appreciate the culture more.
How does this link to well-being besides disconnecting and putting your brain in a different mode? What do you see happening when your clients come back?
That's such a great question, because I was just looking at some testimonies from my Greece trip. And so, what I will say is, my goal is to help them focus on their overall well being. So that's mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And when I have my experiences, we are having some type of wellness workshop. So we're going to have fun, but also going to take some time to do some deep diving and explore ourselves. The last experience I had, I actually was able to have 2 therapists that were able to be a part of the wellness workshop. And
Mm.
so I'm helping these women discover themselves. Do they know what they like about themselves? Do they know what they do well? And if they don't, this experience is an opportunity for them to start thinking about that. And when they come back to the States, okay, how do I tap into that? How do I learn what I like to do? How do I learn what I do well? How do I learn how to love myself? And so we're pouring into them during the experience, and then they're coming back and they're implementing that. And just some of the things that I hear about people, when they return is practicing self-care, learning simple habits, learning to try new hobbies. That's one. We ask the question, like, do you know what you enjoy? It's not easy for everyone to go out and say, I'm just going to take a tennis class. I'm going to try pickleball. I'm going to go knitting, right? I'm going to try a painting class. I'm going to do a candle making class. One, a lot of people do not like doing things by themselves. That's the honest truth. And then two, you immediately assume that you would not like it. So this empowers them to try things that they are not aware of that they may enjoy. And so they're coming back and they're having an open mind to actually trying it. That's some of the feedback that we hear. Also, there's been some situations where they're empowered to say, I need help. Maybe I need to see a therapist. I know that the conversation about mental health, it's some people are for it, some people are not, but they're empowered to say, I need to talk to someone else to vent, to talk about stress, whatever it may be. They're
Mhm.
coming back and they're open to that conversation. And that's all I want them to do is come back with an open mind to do these things. We've had some women who have been able to establish better work life harmony, and so, we have actively had women on our experiences working on their PhD. So they are working on their homework. Now, am I for that? Absolutely not. But I do understand if you're in the middle of a semester, right? And you're almost close to graduating, you're trying to get your dissertation, all those things. There are going to be people that rally behind you, but it's so great to hear when they come back, they're done and they're saying, okay, I've completed this and now I'm making time to pour into myself. And so it's not what you see in the photos of everything is perfect. They're putting in like the work to identify what works for their life because what works for me doesn't work for you. And so the feedback that I'm getting is they're navigating how to determine what works for their routine.
I find travel can be so magical because you actually disconnect. you allow, or not, if you decide to travel and get things done, whatever it is, because you're disconnecting from your routines completely, you either get all the work that you wanted to get done, or you actually get to experience a whole new level of now what? Now I've experienced new things. How you curate your retreats in which you're trying different things and exposing people to different things. Because if you're actually planning your own trip, you're going to do things that you like. I'm usually the planner at home. And it is hard for me to think about sports, but my husband is a huge sports fan. So and this time we went to Charleston. I was like, okay, there's a hockey team. Let's go see them. But takes me a huge effort to think, like, what does he like? How can we make this trip very fun for everybody? And I think when you have someone completely different planning everything for you, you get to experience that because you think of things that other people wouldn't think about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Where can people find you if they want to do a retreat or connect with you, learn how to build boundaries better, or any of those things that you do?
Well, I have a few different platforms that you can connect with. My website is Jessica Rich Coaching. And on there, you can learn about coaching, membership, a little bit about myself. And there's different resources and platforms, blogs that you can connect with. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Jessica Rich. And then on Instagram, I am at Coach Jessica Rich, as well as YouTube. If you're looking for a travel experience and you're feeling empowered, like I'm ready to take the next step. I am not going to wait for my friends and my family to travel and experience the world. I'm not going to wait to retire. Then
Please
you can
don't.
also connect with me. Of course, all of those platforms, you can still connect with me there. But my actual travel website is ICM Travel Experiences. So it stands for I Choose Me, but it's ICM Travel Experiences. And you can see the past photos from Thailand and Greece. And then also we have 2 active trips that are currently out there for Bali and Italy for 2026. So you can connect with me as there as well.
I'm thinking about taking that Bali one.
I cannot. I personally is super excited for Italy and Bali, but Bali is like a place that I would love to live. And so I'm excited for that one.
Just move there. You work online.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jessica. This was such a wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for the work that you're doing. Appreciate
Thank
you.
you.